Well, good afternoon, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Harry Brelsford from SMB Nation, and just an honor and a pleasure to have you join us for fall semester. So this is the MSP Tech Talk series. It's back to school time, literally, across the world, I guess, certainly across the nation. And we're right here with you with a series of 6 lectures over the next 6 weeks. We meet on Wednesdays at the middle of the day for 90 minutes of lecture. And we are hopefully spot on with the topics, starting with an Azure conversation today that we'll get to in a moment. I'm coming to you live from the Channel Pro conference down in Long Beach, California. This is really cool. In fact, full disclosure, I'm going to go on and off mute a little bit because I am at a conference and want to be respectful of Tom and the background noise. But 100, 150 people here, 20, 30 vendors, a lot of familiar faces, and we're having great conversations. So just an honor to be here. A little bit of housekeeping as usual. So hopefully everybody's doing fine in Houston and down in Florida after all that weather madness. And I will be at the I'll be at the Spiceworks conference in Austin in the middle of October. Looking at Continuum in early October, we'll be at Channel Pro in New Jersey in early November. That might be Jenny and I, by the way. We're kind of thinking an East Coast swing might be a lot of fun, and we'll keep you posted on other activities. And then weekly for the MSP Tech Talk starting now for the next 6 weeks. And next Thursday, we have the third quarter, Q3 analyst report next Thursday. We'll get you information on that. Now, with that said, my friend and colleague Tom Moen is here to talk about an increasingly popular topic. So, Tom, where are you today, sir? What's going on? And then let's just jump right into the good stuff.
Well, hey, Harry, I guess California is a popular spot to be in today. I'm in Sacramento, California. So happy to be joining you from Sacramento.
Well, there we go. Hey, Tom, take it away. I might interrupt you once or twice, and I'll certainly be back at 12:30 to have another conversation, but let's rock.
All right, fantastic. And thanks for having me. I appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about Azure and Office 365, and I'm a cloud architect, so these two things usually do go hand in hand. And first and foremost, I want to thank our sponsor today, Fortinet. Yep. So thank you to our sponsor, and Fortinet being a great partner and working in the area of security. I want to start off talking a little bit about security, and one of the things that we see out there is our end users and your customers' end users. They usually want access to these applications, access to their data, email. Mobility has been a big thing for almost a decade now, efficiency, ease of use, but our CIO over there on the right-hand side, or CSO, they want to manage and maintain their risk and control and safety and security. And one of the little graphics that I use, I was doing one of these talks and my daughter asked me to share my PowerPoints with her, and she said that was a very boring topic and it didn't make any sense, and she was just bored with the whole thing. And so I came up with, and many people will use a picture of a castle to talk about security and with moats and high walls. So I licensed this little picture of a castle here, and again, Fortinet, a great firewall provider, and those moats and walls are a big part of the security, overall security message. And I'm going to get to how all this ties in with Office 365 and Azure in just a second. But this is a great capability, being able to protect those our valuable assets like data and information from intruders, and leveraging moats and walls like Fortinet's firewalls do. The problem is, I grew up in Minnesota, and moats are really only effective about 3 months out of the year there. The rest of the time they're frozen solid and you can walk right across them. So, and then there are other things that we need to secure as well, like identity and access. Who can access what when? A lot of folks are using multi-factor authentication. I work in state and local government, and one of the states that I'm working with, they just now made it mandatory that all access to all data repositories will be via multi-factor authentication. So everybody has to have two-factor authentication. And this is true back in the old, and I won't go into too much history. Normally I tell a bunch of castle stories and knight stories, but this is where the salute came from. Knights returning to a castle, of course they'd have the suit of armor, they'd be carrying the flag of the castle, they'd have some indicators that they were a person who belonged there, but then they would lift their face shield so people could see their second factor of identification, their individual face. And that's where the salute came from, that raising of the knight's shield. So interesting little tidbit of history there. The other thing you know, in securing data and making data and access to data more safe and secure is all the rage these days: mobile device, mobile application management, and keeping your end users safe and secure. And then finally your data, and I put that in the middle. If you've been to many or any castles where kings and queens used to reside, you would see there was a very tall tower in the center of the encampment, and that is where they would put the kings and queen and line the stairs with knights. And how we do that in the IT world is using data protection, or Azure information protection in the case of Microsoft, or what used to be called rights management services, to actually encrypt and protect the data as data does move around your customers' organizations. The huge, and another huge thing here, we also have filtering, hygiene, and advanced data protection now. The Advanced Threat Protection ATP, which we've just introduced into Office 365. And all of these things really work together and keep your data more safe and secure. And then with the new data governance and compliance capabilities in Office 365, can eliminate risk and reduce risk. Now, I've talked about a number of things here in Office 365, and I kind of like to do this good, better, best, like we always had with SharePoint. You know, the SharePoint team services was good, SharePoint server was better, and then SharePoint Enterprise was the best. We've always had kind of this good, better, best, and I've added a Nirvana column here just because we've got a couple of capabilities in the new Microsoft 365, and especially in the E5 portion of Microsoft 365, that goes above and beyond. But I'm going to focus today's presentation on that good and better, and how you as MSPs can really leverage these capabilities and expand your business and help protect your customers. So this is really a good thing. So if you have 365 customers, adding the Enterprise Mobility Suite, the Enterprise Mobility Security Suite to those customers and enhancing their environment, and then being able to expand that Azure world out into the thousands and thousands of other solutions that Azure brings to bear is great. So today, and I put on the left-hand side of this column, data protection, identity, and management. And in Office 365, and particularly the E3 suite, your customers will already receive rights management services and data loss protection. When we add EMS to that, we add Azure information protection and can protect files anywhere at any time on any device with a simple right click of the mouse. Identity in Office 365, we do provide single sign-on capabilities to all of the applications inside of Office 365. And in EMS, we extend that out to 2,855 apps, as well as their on-premises legacy apps. We have multi-factor authentication in Office 365, but it's really only multi-factor authentication for Office 365. With EMS, again, we extend that out to the leading 21 providers of multi-factor authentication, which is cool. And then while we do have reporting and auditing in Office 365, we have more and better reports, and even the ability to report on things like Tom's tried to log in from an unusual location, or a location that he's never tried to log in from before, or Harry tried to log in and he was logging in from Southern California, and now 2 minutes later he's trying to log in from the Baltic. We know that that's an impossible travel scenario, we could get alerted to that in the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. Just think of your customers that would have these capabilities, that they would know when somebody's trying to log in from an IP address that's outside of their organization, that they're not coming through a VPN tunnel. And again, that Harry couldn't possibly get from Southern California to the Baltic in 2 minutes. I know he's fast on his bike, but he's not that fast, believe me. So we'd get alerted, and we could do something like call Harry and say, hey, and again, you could be doing this as a provider or an MSP for your customers. That call would come to you, or that alert would come to you that Harry just made this impossible travel scenario, and you could call Harry and say, do you have your cell phone with you? And if you called him on his cell number and he answered, I guess he would, you could turn on multi-factor auth to avert that attack that might be going on out there. And then management in Office 365, we of course have mobile device management and mobile application management. And a good point here is that mobile application management works with all of the mobile device management, AirWatch, Mobile Iron, the other providers of mobile device management, but we do have our own built-in MDM. And then again with EMS, we make that better. So it's like the old commercial, BASF doesn't make the carpet, but they make it more durable. BASF doesn't make the paint, but they make it more colorful. So kind of some nice things here. And with that, I'm just going to jump in and jump into one or a couple quick demos here. And so I do have an Office 365 tenant, and I am logged into that. And I do have some users that were in the administrative interface here. You would see those users. And now I'm over in the Azure portal. And what I'm going to do is go down to the actual capability for our Active Directory. So if your customers already have Office 365, and we'll get into this identity, single sign-on authentication capabilities in just a second. I just wanted, as an overview, to talk about these major areas of this castle and how you can help your customers protect their data and their end users. So from an identity perspective, the first thing is that you're going to be able to add your Office 365. And this is what's really nice about Azure Active Directory, is that once we set up directory synchronization now with Azure Active Directory Connect and are synchronizing our users from a domain controller on premises to Active Directory in the cloud, we can consume that directory and incorporate that. So here I've got my Office 365 directory, and I can see my users, and I could see my groups of users. I could see everybody that isn't in this Office 365 tenant. Now in the old days, which is literally about a year ago, so not that old of old days, but the way we would add this directory was about 128 PowerShell commands that were a paragraph in length each. Now, all we do is go to directory, custom create this directory, and say, heck, I want to use an existing directory. This Azure Active Directory already exists. And why does it exist? It exists because I'm using Azure AD Connect to synchronize my users to Office 365. And then I would just check this box, I'm ready to be signed out now. And you must be a global administrator of your Office 365 environment. When you sign in there and click the green checkbox down in the corner, all of your users will be populated into this environment. So I mentioned one thing, these enhanced reports, impossible travel scenarios, attempted logins from unfamiliar, unknown sources, or after multiple failures. So you get all of these additional reports. And again, we can turn on some nice capabilities here when we're looking at these reports. So we actually get an alert, and then we can respond to that very quickly. So this is a very, very cool capability, and again, it just makes Office 365 that much better. And this is a great capability for you to go out and deliver to your customers, and you don't have to tell them that it just took a couple of clicks of the mouse to do this. You know, it's a great thing, adds tremendous value. Again, in the old days, used to be about 128 PowerShell commands. You can configure things like rights management services. You can deliver capabilities with this Azure Active Directory Premium, such as end user can reset their own password. So we can say that we can enable password reset and password write backs here. And we can do things like, say, before users reset their password, they can authenticate via mobile phone, or we can make them answer a certain number of questions, and all sorts of really nice things that we can do here for password resets and account unlocks, which is still one of the biggest help desk requests out in the world today, is those end user password resets. So you can see I'm kind of scrolling through, and I'm sorry I'm doing this in a fast motion, but you can see all the nice, neat capabilities here. But I can say, yes, users can reset their own password, but they either have to use one or two of these alternate means, or we can ask security questions. So I can say, you know, which questions do we want to ask? You know, where did your parents first meet? You know, where did you meet your spouse? So they can be these out of wallet questions, and you can even customize. So I can even type a custom question here. And once your end user who's forgotten their password answers those questions, they can be allowed to reset their password. So very cool capability that also is included with the Azure Active Directory Premium, which is included with the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. I mentioned accessing or allowing single sign-on and multi-factor auth to a number of other applications out there. And yes, I know I'm not keeping the changes, but I can go into these applications and take my same infrastructure that I have and my same capability for multi-factor authentication. If it's the phone factor that's built in, the solution that Microsoft bought and makes available to Office 365 customers, or if it's, again, RSA or any of those other providers, Smart Card, Telesign, any of the other 21 providers, we can come in here and use that multi-factor authentication. We can use this ability for single sign-on to other applications. I'm going to just click Add here, and you'll see that I get these two buttons. I can add a legacy application that my organization is developing, either in Azure or on-premises, or I can add an application from the vast gallery. And this is kind of a cool thing because, there are about 28, well, now there's 2,896. The number that I had memorized was 2,855, but there are almost 3,000 applications now in here. And one city I was working with, they actually had a Facebook page, as many of your customers might have a Facebook page. This city employee was managing their Facebook page, and the way she was authenticating to Facebook to manage the city's Facebook page was through her Yahoo email account. Well, this person was terminated from the city, and she went to the Facebook page, deleted some things off the wall, pasted some, or posted, not pasted, maybe she did paste them. She might have copied and pasted them and when she posted them, but posted some not nice things about the city because her authentication to Facebook was through her Yahoo account, which the city had no control of. So now I could just name this FB here and quickly add Facebook to my Azure Active Directory Premium, so the moment somebody is deleted or disabled from AD on premises, that person would no longer have access to Facebook. Think of all the pain and angst that would have saved this particular city. And again, you can have any of these applications. Here at Microsoft, we use Concur for travel. It's right here, but another thing that we use is ADP for our payroll. And so around tax time, I used to have to log in with a different ADP username and a different ADP password. And about the only time I logged in was at tax time, so I always forgot that, and I always had to spend hours on a support call with ADP getting my username and password reset. So here under ADP Easy Pay, I can just rename this Easy Pay, and now I have single sign-on to Easy Pay. Well, the minute I click this checkbox, I have single sign-on to Easy Pay, and I have multi-factor authentication to Easy Pay with just a couple clicks of the mouse. Think how nice that would be for your customers to have a single sign-on capability to 3,000 other SaaS applications, and the management and control of that, knowing that the second somebody's deleted or disabled from AD, they would no longer be able to access those services. So this is all a really nice benefit of Azure AD Premium, which is a benefit of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. But I wanted to come back here and talk about another great opportunity that you have to not just help customers be a little bit more safe and secure, but to also extend your services out and their capabilities from identity. And as you might know, and I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly, we do have really two types of identity. There's a cloud identity which isn't synchronized, and that's great for those smaller customers that maybe don't have an on-premises directory. Maybe they're in a pilot. You might have synchronized identity with an on-premises directory with password hash sync. And I like password hash sync because it does give us a capability for a poor man's high availability for directory. With Active Directory Federation services, or with third parties like F5, you have a great ability to provide single sign-on to customers in the widest variety and across the most applications. There are some additional benefits of ADFS here, but I wanted to talk mostly about, again, the services that you can do to make their sign-in and their ability to access their services and resources, whether it's Office 365 or Facebook in the case that I just showed you, or ADP or Concur, another travel service out there, any of those other 3,000 SaaS applications. And what's nice about this, and what you might be familiar with, is today if you're using directory synchronization, you've got your customer has Active Directory on premises, where they keep their users and their groups of users. They hopefully have a Fortinet firewall out there, and then they've got Office 365 with Azure Active Directory. So the way we get those users and those groups of users in the cloud is to connect that through Azure AD Connect, and then we sync those end users to the cloud, which is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, a lot of customers might use a third-party solution behind Active Directory that populates or manages. They might have an ERP solution that manages those end users and populates them in Active Directory. They might use a CA Active Role server, and that's just great. Anything behind this orange line we really don't care about from an Office 365 or a EMS Azure perspective. So we're still going to put an Azure AD Connect server. We're still going to synchronize those users up. And then what people are concerned about is, how do I provide single sign-on and take advantage of these other services? So an internet client out there is going to hit the cloud. That's going to come to a proxied ADFS form outside the firewall. It's going to pass through behind the firewall, get to Active Directory, and if that user is a good current user, they haven't been disabled or deleted, it'll return a token, and that token will hit Office 365 and allow that end user to get that email or that SharePoint site or whatever there is. Now, what customers come up with, or what they're concerned about, is something failing back here. Like, what happens if something behind our firewall in our data center goes down? This person can no longer have access to the cloud. And this is a great opportunity for you to provide these services around Resilient ID and putting these things like a domain controller. We're going to first of all configure a site-to-site VPN to Azure. We're going to put a domain controller in Azure in an Azure virtual machine. We're going to put Azure AD Connect, another virtual machine running in the cloud. And then we're going to connect that domain controller. So this is really a domain controller running in the cloud. So we're going to enable trusts here. So it's just going to look like another DC, another member DC in their Active Directory forest. And then we're going to put this Azure AD in the cloud. So that's going to synchronize those users to Office 365. And we're going to keep that up and available for those end users out here. So if, again, now I'm an end user and I've got my laptop and I'm going to connect to Office 365, and if I've used hash sync, it's just going to say, yep, here's the user's token, and return that to me, and I'm going to be a very happy camper. Similarly, if we deploy ADFS, we can create a public IP out here, and we'll put our ADFS proxy, sorry for the bad handwriting, I'm at a very bad angle here, outside our firewall, and then we'll put our ADFS, and these can be deployed in just single because Azure gives you the high availability. I don't have to put load balancers. You certainly could, but Azure is going to protect and make this ADFS virtual machine in Azure highly available, and this virtual machine in Azure highly available. So in this case now, when this end user goes to authenticate, ADFS, perfect. We're going to hit Office 365, which is going to take us to ADFS in Azure, pass this securely, because again, this is just really extending out the data center through this site-to-site VPN. So then that user will hit ADFS, and they can either authenticate here in the cloud, or that, the token would be generated from the cloud here, and then that, again, web page or that email will be returned to that end user, again, making them extremely happy. So I have to draw a even bigger smile.
Tom?
Yes, Harry, go ahead.
Hey, I promised you I'd come back and check in at midpoint, so a little bit of housekeeping. Then, Tom, we're going to talk a little bit of football in a minute. So that's pretty exciting stuff, although Seattle had a rough one. We don't have to talk about that, Tom. But with that said, if you joined us late, this is the fall semester for the MSP Tech Talk. It's back to school time, folks. This is the first class of 6 that we'll be doing every Wednesday for the next 6 weeks. Handpicked content, as you see Tom Moen today talking about Azure, increasingly popular in the SMB space, the conversation. Next week on Thursday, I also have the Q3 analyst report. That tends to be a popular conversation. I'll have updates on Microsoft and some other things. Then it's off to Continuum in early October at this point. I'm confirmed for Spiceworks in mid-October. Tom, it's really cool with Spiceworks. I just learned the other day that's the same time as the Austin City Limits Music Festival. So, Tom, I took a couple personal days. I'm staying over a few days, my friend.
I would imagine I would have expected no less from you, Harry, than that. So,
exactly. And then, folks, you can see Jenny and I at this point out in New Jersey in early November at the Channel Pro event. Speaking of which, I am at Channel Pro right now, right here in Long Beach, California. So, Jenny, hey, if you're ready, are we ready to talk some football? And Fortinet, our sponsor?
If Tom's ready, then we are ready as well.
Okay, and folks, this sound comes over the computer, so turn on your computer speakers. This is an interesting point of record. If you could, we have a poll question I see. Jenny, go ahead and line up the poll. I'm going to talk to you about your time in the NFL in just a second.
All right.
Since we're talking football. Folks, we have a poll question. Do you offer security services across a significant part of your business? Please answer. Hey, Tom, while the people are answering that quickly, tell us how you were on the field. What were you, quarterback, defensive lineman? What was your story? You were out there.
Yeah, I was kind of fast, so I was a wide receiver. No, actually, so I was on the team that was responsible for deploying the surfaces that you see, the Surface devices that are used on the sidelines, in the coaching booths, and in the owner suites across the NFL. So I went from city to city, and it was a hurry-up offense, I must say. We weren't allowed into the stadiums until 5 hours before kickoff. And like when I was going around the country doing the updates to the ProView application that ran on 13 surfaces on the home team, 13 surfaces on the visitor, 13 in the coaching, their coaching booth, and 13 in the opposing coach's booth, and 13 other devices. So we had to update somewhere in the neighborhood. I'm trying to do the math now, but I think it was 72 devices within 5 hours before the kickoff, and everything had to be up and running, or they weren't used. Even if like one machine didn't work on one sideline or in one coach booth, they had to turn them all off because somebody couldn't have an unfair advantage on the field. So it was a pressure cooker. Yeah, it was a pressure cooker, but it was a lot of fun as well.
All righty, sir. Well, thank you. Jenny, go ahead and close the poll. The people have spoken. And Tom, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Fortinet and what our relationship is with them. And so this will be sort of a quick couple minutes interactive conversation. So Tom, I know that one of your niches is state and local government. And of course, security would be paramount, and Fortinet certainly plays there. And Tom, I'm assuming you maybe on occasion have had the chance to bump into him. I know you were living in a different realm. Clearly, we're talking about Azure. You had Office 365 conversations. But does that make sense? Was security part of the fabric that you had to hit head on with state and local government?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, securing the network, and whether it's through devices, and I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers video did a great thing there. That I heard him say that they were in crawl spaces and going underneath the seats, and I think a lot of that was for quality of service, but then there's also the security of service. And when you've got one of the other things that I did work with was the Minnesota Twins organization, and they also provide a good number of services to their people in the stands. And when you've got an audience of 50,000 people, I don't know, 1%, 10%, I don't know what percentage of hackers are out there, but people looking to get something for nothing or cause some damage to that network, it's very important to not only have that quality of service, but security of service as well. The last thing you'd want is somebody, getting their devices erased or infected while they're visiting or through visiting, your beloved team at a sporting event. So again, quality and security are very, very important. We see that in government too, as they offer their websites out to their constituents and services out to their constituents, and more governments have to provide the ability for constituents to be self-serving, and those self-serving constituents want to remain safe. I know, Harry, you live in Washington. I'm looking to move back to Washington State, and some of the services that they're providing there in a self-service direction, and they are implementing multi-factor authentication. So somebody goes into a state of Washington website, your home phone or cell phone will ring, you'll answer that call, and press the pound key, and then the website will refresh with that service. So again, very important to be able to provide those services so constituents or fans are protected.
Well, and Fortinet's right there with us. And Tom, I'll end with this, and we'll get back to Azure, is that what's been really interesting in 2017, Fortinet reached out to us and said, how can we be a great SMB citizen? How can we have a conversation with the SMB Nation audience? And they joined us spring semester. We're back for fall semester. Folks, I'll end with it. They're a $1.4 billion company. They're like the largest company you may or may not have heard of. Part of that was by design, and part of that is changing, and that's why we're here. With that said, Tom, I'm going to go back on mute because, as you know, I'm on the floor at the Channel Pro show in Long Beach. I'm right here with you. I'm just listening today, Tom. Let's rock. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Harry
yeah,
and Tom, before we get started, we had a question, and I thought we better ask it before we get too far because it has to do with the last slide. Tom, it says,
okay.
is all of what you just drew something I would want to suggest to a client of 10 to 20 PCs and one server? If so, how much could this possibly cost the client?
Yeah, super good question, and so yeah, and then I'm gonna show you something else here that will be very appropriate to the audience and especially to Fortinet. But one of the things, I'm going to share out my screen again, so hopefully you can see that graphic image that I had before.
Yep, we're good.
Not only do we have to, deploy ADFS, again, I'm a Microsoft employee, so ADFS would be preferred, but you can use third parties like F5 here. Now, the beautiful thing about an organization of 5 or 10 or 20 people, you could put that entire workload up in the cloud, so you wouldn't have to have any of these resources even on premises. We're seeing a lot of that these days as people are just, forget having anything on premises. We're just going to put that domain controller up here in the cloud. We're going to have Azure AD Connect in the cloud. We're going to have F5 in the cloud. And what's nice about this is that domain controller for 5 or 10 people is going to be about $39 a month. That Azure AD Connect server, probably about the same, about $39. And that F5 is going to be about $94. So, for $150, $200 a month, you're off to the races. Where really the only infrastructure, and again, I grew up with small business server like Harry did. I'm an SBSer, a long time SBSer, but if you look at this now, you virtually have a ISP and a router at your home office, and that's it. Everything else is, and if you're going to print things, a printer, and that's it. The other nice aspect of, so I hope that answered the question. So yes, even I think a 5 or 10 person organization would be able to deploy that and take advantage of it. I switched over to the new Azure portal, and one of the nice things that you get in the new Azure portal is this PaaS. So infrastructure as a service is the ability for me to come in here and say, hey, I want to add a new virtual machine. So Windows Server 2016 data center, and I can just click that Windows 2016 data center server. I'll name it. I will put in my username and my password to that server. I'll determine which subscription, how I want to pay for that. And then a resource group is really like a virtual rack. Think of this as the network, the compute, the storage, the things that you'd have in a rack. And this resource group can be quickly assigned there. This is infrastructure as a service. I'm creating a virtual machine in the cloud just like I'd have a virtual machine on premises. Then we move to platform as a service, where I click the new button here, and I just did a Fortinet search. So find me Fortinet, and these are all the services that are available from Fortinet. They've got their mail security gateway in the cloud. I don't have to have anything on premises. I've got NGFW single VM template. I've got all of these Fortinet firewall routers, and I'm building them up in the cloud and can take advantage of them without having anything at all on premises, which is kind of cool. And we're not just limited to the servers that Microsoft has. So down here you can see, like, these are popular. There's Ubuntu. I can build a Ubuntu server. I can build a Strato blockchain app, a block app, WordPress. So I can have a web app in SQL instead of building that app on premises through IIS and putting a SQL database on premises. So really the sky is the limit here, and we're seeing more and more. We're seeing roughly hundreds of new platform as a service capabilities come into the cloud each and every day, which is really a pretty cool thing. Yeah, so that's Azure. and the ability for you to offer your customers a very highly available, resilient identity and very secured access to get some capabilities like Azure information protection, and to protect content and to protect that content securely. And another huge benefit of that data protection, if I come out and this PowerPoint presentation that we've been using here today, and I right-click this and I say, hey, I'm gonna protect this and I want to share this with somebody, but I want to share it protected. This is all Azure information protection, which again is a component of EMS. I want to share this file with Harry or Jenny. I can say, hey, I want to share this. Jenny is going to be view only. Harry, I need him to co-author this in case I no longer want to author it. I can just type in their email address, and then I can say I want to expire this document. Like, I don't want Harry or Jenny to actually see this document after December 1st. I want to be emailed. I send Harry a good number of documents, like I did this presentation, and then I asked him, what'd you think about that presentation, Harry? And he was like, yeah, fine, just good, it's good. But then, because I never got emailed, I know he never even opened the file. So I could say, well, I'm glad you liked the presentation, but I saw that you never even opened the PowerPoint. So this is like a read receipt, but for documents that you send or even share in SharePoint or OneDrive or Box or Dropbox. I can still put this on there, so I'm notified when somebody tries to open these documents. And not only do I see when and who tried to open those documents, but I get a report on where they tried to open that document. So a good friend of mine said, geez, just think about Sony and all those files that were stolen from them. If they saw that they were being opened in North Korea, they could say, gosh, we don't have anybody in North Korea, so let's instantly revoke access to these documents, and then nobody would have ever gotten the content of those documents. There was a loss of intellectual property, a loss of personally identifiable information from customers, registrations, etc. So the neat thing here is that we can expire access to the document, we can track who's reading it and where, and we can pull back access if these documents fall out of the hands of somebody that we did want those documents to be in. So pretty cool capability. Harry, I don't know if you had any other questions, or Jenny, if any other questions came in the queue.
We do have quite a few questions. However, we will let you finish your presentation and we'll take the rest at the end. I just wanted to make sure we got that one because it pertained to the last slide. Yeah,
and I'm pretty much wrapped up right there. I just assumed we'd want to leave time for questions. I did leave about 10 minutes for questions at the end here.
Perfect. Let me get started. We have quite a few.
Excellent.
When is Microsoft going to consolidate to one AD sync client? Right now, there are 2 Azure AD syncs and the built-in Windows Essentials.
So we've got 2 separate purpose Azure AD Connects. Those should be consolidated to one here in the not too distant future. As we saw, DirSync, there were 4 generations of directory synchronization tool, and then we had these 2 separate gens of DirSync with Azure AD Connect. That will consolidate in, I think that's on the roadmap for sometime yet this calendar year. So real soon now we'll see one Connect tool. And the other thing, and I didn't really talk about this, but there is another method of authentication. This is kind of taking us to the 300 or 400 level and giving you a little sneak peek. But we do have a web application proxy for desktop SSO. And I said this is kind of new stuff because it's been in preview for a while. But you might start hearing a lot about PTA, pass-through authentication. And pass-through authentication is really the next generation of single sign-on from Microsoft. And I think at that point in time, and again, PTA, pass-through authentication, should be shipping yet this calendar year. At that point in time, I think we'll drop down to one and only one version of Azure AD Connect. super great question, and I hope that was a great answer.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Tom, we just got one in, and it says, will it be retroactive? And that's all it says, so I'm not quite sure.
Well, I think by retroactive means the ability to upgrade in place. So when DirSync was deprecated and we moved to the new Azure AD Connect, you did have to remove and reinstall. You basically turned off your DirSync and installed a Azure AD Connect, and I think that will be the same scenario here. We're not talking about days of effort. It's really minutes or hours at most to stand up a new Azure AD Connect server, and you can stand that right up alongside of your existing Azure AD Connect server. But in the past, Azure AD Connect, as we've released new feature function capabilities, it was a upgrade in place, but this is going to be a replace. So you will have to stand up a new Azure AD Connect server, disconnect, and that's not really a big problem because Azure AD, I've seen people set it all the way from sync every 3 hours to sync once every 5 days in smaller organizations. So taking that server down, you will get an alert, a warning that you've got an unhealthy sync. If it did take you 3 hours and a sync should have occurred, you will get a unhealthy sync alert in your email, RSS feed, and warning at the admin center of Office 365. But as soon as you stand up the new Azure AD Connect and have a healthy sync, which you can force almost immediately, even that warning would go away and you're back off to the races.
Great. Tom, we had a couple people saying that if you were doing a presentation, they couldn't see the demo. They could just, it got stuck on your slides, and they were wondering if they could see the demo.
Gosh, I'm sorry. I should have asked. Normally I do clear and make sure that people can see the screen. Jenny, can you see the screen that I have in front of us now? And I just switched back.
All I see is your PowerPoint.
Really? I did have screen all. Well, let's go here. Now are you seeing the Azure?
Now we're seeing it, yes.
Oh, bummer. Well, I apologize, but I'll try to. You get 2 for 1 in your demos today. So this is actually inside of my Microsoft Azure account. All I did was simply log in here, and then to add an additional Microsoft directory. And again, this is where you'll add those virtual machines as infrastructure as a service. And we've made these even very nice and easy and painless by being able to just click the quick create here. And we do have a complete gallery for these virtual machines. So you can go to the gallery and choose an image, or you can bring your own image or your customer's images. So if you have a customer that has a gold standard image for their Windows, Ubuntu, CoreOS, CoreOS, or SUSE, they can take their images and upload them and have them available in the quick create. I don't know what that notice was. And then what I showed was inside of Active Directory, adding a directory from Office 365. So again, I've already got Azure AD Connect connecting up to Office 365. I want to use that same directory here. It's just a simple matter, and hopefully this is still keeping up. And you're able to see the custom created new directory.
Yep, I can see.
Perfect.
I'm following along.
Fantastic. And this is where I mentioned like the estate that I'm working with, providing multi-factor auth and a business to constituent directory in this case. But with connecting to your Office 365, we're just going to say I want to use an existing directory, and then I'm ready to be signed out now. So the caveat here, you as a partner, you have to be a partner on behalf of Office 365 and a co-admin, co-administrator to Azure. But all you're going to do is check that box and click OK. and then it will add the Office 365 directory. So in this case, my PN Pacific Northwest demo here, and if I click on that directory, I can see all of the users that were in my Office 365 environment instantly available here in Azure. And then again, I can see those reports that I mentioned earlier, so the sign in from unknown sources or multiple geographies or the users with leaked credentials. I can run audit reports, I can run groups and team reports. There are a bunch of group name changes or group adds in Office 365. A bunch of nice reports here that come in the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. And then I did show a couple of solutions here for, or the other thing that you get is an ability to add an application that you're developing on premises for authentication, multi-factor authentication, or any of these almost 3,000 SaaS applications out here. And I did search for Facebook and added Facebook. So I'm sorry you weren't able to see that, but it's just a simple matter of, and I'll just call this Facebook 2, and then adding the checkbox here. So I apologize that my scenario wasn't being followed along with the demo, but just that easy to add any of those 3,000 SaaS applications for single sign-on and multi-factor authentication.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Another question. One of my clients has one server on site, and they use Office 365. And now they are ready to replace that server. So my question is, can I eliminate the server totally? And if yes, what's involved to do that? Plus the cost per month for the client needs some guidance.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so depending upon what's running on that server, how many, so this is kind of a lift and shift, or we call it, and I just heard this phrase this morning for the first time, closet to cloud. And in lifting and shifting or moving closet to cloud, you could come into your compute here and add a virtual machine, just as I did now. In the old interface, which is what I'm using here right now, you don't really get the pricing information. You'll get things like what size, and it's generally small, medium, large, but again, you'll see all these servers here. If I go into the new portal, which I think opened in a new window, and then we will just come back here and say that we're going to add a new compute. So if you know how many CPUs, how many cores, how many CPUs, how much storage you have attached to that server, you can come in and actually get a Windows. Would help if I could spell Windows right. So this will show me all of the Windows servers from Microsoft here. So let's say we're going to replace it with a 2012 R2. Let's go with 2016 data center server. All right, so we're going with a 2016 data center server. And then you will see in the sizing here, so there's basic configurations and then there's size. So I'll just call this SMB demo. I'm just always admin, and I use always my same password, so I never forget it. For those machines, that's checked. And I'm going to put this in. Oh, yeah. And you can determine where in the United States or where in the world they are. If they had users, like if I had users in Brazil and users in Canada, I could build a server or service in Brazil and build one in Canada, so it's closer to them if they so desire. I don't think I'm going to get around this guy because I didn't switch my subscription. But the main thing is here that the next page that would show up is actually a size, and it would show my actual costs of servers in the cloud, and I can do this a little different way by coming over here and going to our pricing. And you will see through this pricing calculator, and again, you can do this outside of the Azure tenant, but inside the Azure tenant, again, all the prices would be there. But I can say, hey, I'm going to build a virtual machine here. But if that virtual machine is really just an IIS server hosting a web app, you can just go right to a web app here. But and I don't know where this person was asking the question from, but let's just say that you're in the north central United States. If you want a Windows server, this brings the license with it. If you wanted to run Oracle or BizTalk on top of it, and then your typical standard, low priority, or basic, this will give you your different. Usually only recommend basic for testing, not really typical usage. And then you will see another thing here, like this is an A1 1-core 1.75 gig of RAM. There's this scratch disk, and I love that we did add the word temporary storage here, because you're going to go back and add storage to this, and you'll add network too. But you're seeing that this is running at about 9 cents an hour, or $66 a month for this server. Generally figure on hardware, it's about the same monthly fee as a 5-year lease on a piece of hardware would be. But one of the huge benefits here, and I'll go back and add storage to this. So we'll add durable, highly available storage, and then you determine again, and if you feel, hey, this is an app that has to be up and running all the time, we can put the virtual machine in the north central, and we can actually put the storage in the east if I wanted to do that. And then we'll just say we want to have a terabyte of storage here, $21. So I think my total cost is about $88 a month for a terabyte of storage, and that server running in highly available. Now, just remember, like this 1 terabyte of storage, that we keep 3 copies of that data in data center A. In this case, if we're doing locally redundant in the eastern United States, we'll go with geographically redundant storage. And then you can pick a different tier here, and you will see cool is less expensive than hot, just more transactions and higher performance, more IOPS. So you're seeing that went from $22 to about $26 a month, but now we've got 3 copies in data center A and 3 additional copies in data center B. So we actually have 6 terabytes of storage here in a very hot, swappable way. So not only managed, but highly available storage. So now we're up to about $100 a month for this server to run, totally in the cloud.
All right. We got another question here, Tom, and I think you've answered some of the pieces, but I just want to make sure we covered everything. It says, how can this be implemented easy with essential servers for 10 to 20 user office? What pieces software is needed?
And that's another nice thing here in Azure, and this is, power by the hour, or, you're basically any of these machines, like in my tenant, and hopefully you're still able to see the screen here. But in my tenant, I had a lot of services running. And if I look at all the items here, and I do have 2 different subscriptions, but if I look at all the items in my paid for subscription, some of these virtual machines are turned off. So I did have a customer that was indexing all of their content in a records management solution, an e-discovery solution, and they had 5 virtual machines that were running all the time. And what we did was we built instead of 5 machines running all the time, we built a big honking machine, and it ran 2 hours on Friday night from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and then we turned it off. And you're not billed when these servers are deallocated. The minute I click the start button here, I'm going to start getting charged for this server. So it showed me to click down $1. I've only got $19 left in my subscription here, so I'll stop this immediately. But while these devices are stopped, they're not costing anything. So if in these bursting workloads or temporary workloads, you can turn these workloads on and off, or deallocate them is the proper terminology. And it saves state, it saves everything right where it is when you deallocate. When you start one of these back up, it's right back where it was when you deallocated it when you left off. And so that's a neat way to save cost there. That essential server, again, what you're going to do is just in the virtual server world here is just come in and click a quick create, and then determine the size and type. But again, everything is included: the server, the CPUs, the scratch disk. You'll add the storage, and of course the Windows operating system here as well. So you can build out a Windows server, and then determine how many cores and how much RAM you want. And these things go all the way up to these gargantuan servers, 32 cores with 448 gig of memory. And you can, again, price that out with the pricing calculator that I was just showing very efficiently.
So the Windows licensing is included in the price?
It is, yep. And if you want, that's where there was that option for no OS. So if you are bringing your own license, you can say no OS. I don't see it here in the quick creates, but again, you can have a no OS image and bring your own licenses for the OS. So you can bring your own software. You'll see that in many places, even under these SUSE and Linux variants here. But you will see no OS, and not here in the quick create. But oh, I don't know what happened there. Said that it's paused my screen sharing. So you will, and hopefully you can see my screen again. Yes?
Yep.
Perfect. So again, pick the server, pick the operating system, pick the size, and you're off to the races.
Does that include client access licenses as well?
Does not include the CALs. So you'll want to license those CALs through your normal appropriate channel.
Fantastic. We'll give it a minute more to see if any other additional questions come in, but wanted to say great presentation, and thanks so much, Tom, for doing it. Also wanted to remind everybody that the presentation has been recorded, and I will be sure to send out a replay link within the next 48 hours. So look for an email from me which has a replay link. It's going to have some great resources also in the email to make sure that you check out after the webinar. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns, either to Tom or myself. Both of our information will be in that email as well. And then last, also wanted to mention we do have 2 events next week. One is the MSP Tech Talk, and then we also have our Q3 analyst report. So I'll make sure to include that information in the email. Be sure to look out for that email, as it does have a lot of pertinent information in it. And Tom, it looks like we have a couple more questions coming in if you want to answer those.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. First one, why aren't there more Server 2016 options when choosing a VM?
Yeah, and I think you know, right now we're looking at, and one of the things that I didn't show was in that window. Typically, after I had the right subscription assigned there, what I would normally do after I put in the name of the server, my username and password, pick the resource group, and apply the pricing calculation. The next step is that sizing of the server, and right in that window, generally what you will see is the ability to pick, and they will show, Microsoft actually present the most popular versions of servers that are being deployed in Azure first, and then then all of the other sizes of servers. And right now we're working on, you know, what are the most popular versions in the preview that were utilized for 2016 servers. So I think you will see more and more variants and more offerings as far as 2016 server in the not too distant future here.
Great. And then the question on Essentials wasn't to run in the cloud, but it was how to use Azure with existing Essentials on-prem.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So, I don't know if I'm sharing out. I think I stopped sharing. So let me go back to sharing the whole screen here. And I'm drawing a blank on which one of these. Well, I'll just do this right in PowerPoint. So you should be able to see a PowerPoint slide now.
We can, yes.
Perfect. So I'll just delete that and move this over. So this is a critical thing here for any workload, but so let's just say we have a Essentials server and this is on premises, and then we've got our firewall, and then up here we've got Azure. And say that we've got some other server. And you know, this could be like, let's say we got a database on this and we've got an app up here. We want to have the app highly available, and one part of this app is that it either writes data to or pulls data from this Essentials server or whatever you've got running on this. I'm just throwing a database on there to say that, you know, up here in Azure I could write to this or I could pull information from that. The best and easiest thing to do, again, is when you're making this connection from on-premises to Azure, is to make this network here, and we'll just call this virtual network, to make that a site-to-site VPN. So it's a virtual private network. And inside of Azure, when you're building that network out, and hopefully you can still see the screen here. It continues to flash at me kind of funnily, but
we can still see your PowerPoint. Yep.
Oh, you're still seeing the PowerPoint. You're not.
Yep.
Okay. Go back here and say show everything. I don't know. I had one that said show everything on my screen. Is that now? Are you seeing the Azure interface again now?
Yep, we are.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm out of my normal office, so I didn't have my second monitor, or I could have shared that. But so again, I apologize for that. What was I going to show you here? Oh, so you just, again, like this virtual rack that you're creating in the cloud, one of these things is a network. And what you'll do is create this virtual network, and I would call this, you know, like my site to site. And then again, wherever my resources are, you typically want to have the resources in the same data center, but you can do things like put this database in the eastern US and put this other database in the western US, put this app in western US and this app in the eastern US to make them highly available, having the app connected to both the west and the east database, and having the West app connected to both the West and the East database. So if either databases go offline or either apps go offline, the end users will still see that app and access to the database. And I think I built that last storage in that virtual machine. I was putting that in North Central. So then you'll create that, you'll name it, you put in the IPN, the IP range, and then configure that as a site-to-site VPN. So this would be a private connection, so it would be private appearing from you on premises to Azure in the cloud, which is super fantastic. And a good buddy of mine, Jeff Langford, made all kinds of nice videos out here. If you're video, I think we're giving you all access to these slides in a PDF fashion, so you'll be able to click on any of these, but there's a nice, you know, how to build a virtual network and VPN connections in 30 minutes. And he did, again, a super job at these recordings. So again, we'll make these available to you at the end of the event.
Great. Essentials assume.
I'm hoping that answered the question fully. Sorry, Jenny.
Nope. We will see if they continue to write additional questions, but we've got one more. Essentials.
Sure.
Assume all we want is improved Azure reports and control. No desire to run a server in Azure. Keep it simple.
Perfect. If you want to do that, then yes, there is just Azure Active Directory Premium. Out here, we can for sure just go to Azure AD Premium. That's like $1.80 a user to get those additional reports and things. I'm trying to see if this is Azure Active Directory. It'll probably be here. So that just adds an additional like $1.80 cost per user. And there's great information here. It kind of covers all the things that I was going through, and then taking your directory, to Azure Office 365 and beyond, shows all those other single sign-ons. I was hoping for the differences in Azure AD Premium over AD, because we basically have the free Azure AD, and then we've got the basic Azure AD, which is what comes with Office 365, and then you've got the premium Azure AD. So those are the three flavors of Azure Active Directory, and this is a good little thing. So it does talk about the free, basic, premium, and then I always forget that we added this premium P2, but it will show that these are the things: the identity protection and privileged identity management. So privileged access management, for those of you who are familiar with Office 365. These are the things that you'll get with in the different versions of Azure AD, but this can be a la carte or as a component of the Enterprise Mobility Security Suite. Super good question.
They just keep rolling in here, Tom. We got more. What can Office or O365 Azure free provide?
Yeah, so the free is actually, when we're looking here, basic is what you get with Office 365, and I think the big differences here, other than the additional feature function capabilities, are the number of applications that's supported, and then the ability to have the B2B collaboration, that whole business to constituent, in my world, working with state and local government. But and again, these advanced reports, those advanced reports kick in at the premium level. You get a couple of more reports, nothing really earth-shattering, but I think we might see some more development out there in the advanced reporting world. But your self-service password reset, and some of those other nice capabilities, you will see them here. But really, the only major differences in Premium P2 over Premium P1 are the identity protection and the privileged access management. And again, what you're getting with O365 is this basic column. So this, we should probably put that on the website. It's like O365, and then this is included in EMS or standalone.
You mentioned that we need Azure AD Premium for the end user to be able to restart their password. Isn't that available in the free version?
Yeah, so inside of Office 365, again, I can have an end user, and the end user can reset their password for Office 365. But in Premium, they can reset their password for not only 365, but for all those other 3,000 almost SaaS applications and on-premises legacy applications as well. So that's the primary difference there. And with Office 365, when you are resetting your password, that is with Azure Active Directory Connect in write back mode, it will write back to AD on premises. So yes, in fact, when we're changing our password in Office 365, we're resetting our password on premises. But if you had passwords to these third-party applications, that wouldn't be included. This, through single sign-on to those 3,000 applications, would also be reset as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Tom. It looks like we've cleared the deck on questions. We did have a lot of questions and want to thank everybody for their participation and sticking with us till the end. That was fantastic. Again, we did record the webinar, and I will be sure to get it out within the next 48 hours, and definitely look at it because it's got a lot of great resources in it. So thanks again, Tom, and everybody have a fantastic day.
Well, thank you. Appreciate everybody's time today. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.